In 2017, a new collective bargaining agreement was agreed to by the NBA's players and owners. In this CBA, a new provision was made called the Designated Veteran Players Extension, or the Supermax contract. This would allow teams to pay their franchise players 35% of the salary cap, therefore encouraging stars to stay in small markets. This would come in reaction to Kevin Durant leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder in favor of the 73-win Golden State Warriors, creating a super team and an unbalance in the NBA. With the Supermax, KD may have stayed in Oklahoma as they could offer him more money than any other team. Obviously, not every player is eligible for the Supermax, as no one wants to see Harrison Barnes be paid $40 million a year. To be eligible for the Supermax, the player must be headed into his 8th or 9th season and do one of three things. Number one, make an All-NBA team in either the season before signing the extension or two of the previous 3 seasons. Number two, win the MVP in any of the previous 3 seasons. Or number 3, win the Defensive Player of the Year, either the season before signing the extension or 2 of the previous 3 seasons. The player must also have been drafted or acquired on his rookie contract by the team offering him the Supermax. Now that we know what the Supermax is and who is eligible, let's take a look at every example of Supermax eligibility to see if the Supermax has been successful. The first move involving a player eligible for the Supermax came in 2017 at the 2017 All-Star break, when Supermax eligible DeMarcus Cousins was traded by the Sacramento Kings to the New Orleans Pelicans for what at the time seemed like pennies on the dollars. The reason? The Sacramento Kings did not want to pay Cousins the Supermax, as he had too many problems and simply wasn't worth 35% of the cap. It looks like here the Supermax scared a team into trading their franchise player and did not benefit neither the team nor the player. Next, we have an example of players actually signing the Supermax. In the summer of 2017, both Stephen Curry and James Harden agreed to Supermax extensions with their teams. These two players are both undoubtedly worth and worthy of the Supermax. Due to the Supermax, they are paid what they deserve, and the Warriors and Rockets get to retain their franchise players. An example of the Supermax working. 2 other players signed Supermax extensions in the summer of 2017, Russell Westbrook and John Wall. Westbrook and Wall were both franchise players for their small market franchises, and both qualified for the Supermax. So they both received the Supermax, 35% of the cap compared to the normal 25% of the cap for just a normal max. These contracts have been problematic though. Wall has been destroyed by injuries since signing the Supermax. He's yet to play more than half a season. His contract is widely regarded as one of the worst in the NBA and has prevented the Wizards from building around their other star, Bradley Beal. The situation has been a bit better for Westbrook and the Thunder. Westbrook was coming off winning the 2017 MVP and carrying the Thunder to the playoffs as they lost Kevin Durant in the previous offseason. Westbrook played 2 seasons with the Thunder where he made the All-Star game, but flamed out in the playoffs. In the 2019 offseason, the Thunder decided to rebuild and would trade Russell Westbrook to the Houston Rockets. After an up-and-down season with the Rockets, it was clear Westbrook was aging and no longer worth his contract. So, in the 2020 offseason, Russell Westbrook's terrible contract was traded for another terrible contract, John Wall's. The Supermax has troubled the Thunder, Rockets, and Wizards, and these 2 franchise players are not celebrated but negative assets that have now been traded for each other. The next player to qualify for the Supermax was Anthony Davis. Davis qualified by making the All-NBA first team in 2017-18. Davis was also the first player to publicly decline the Supermax. Knowing Davis had declined the Supermax and had 1 year left on his contract and that he was going to leave in the next offseason, the Pelicans would trade Anthony Davis to the Lakers. This example for me is a write-off. Davis wasn't re-signing with the Pelicans no matter the amount of money, so the Supermax didn't do much. At least AD declining the Supermax let the Pelicans know that they should trade him instead of just losing him for nothing. The next player eligible was Damian Lillard. Dame falls into the same boat as Curry and Harden. The Supermax allows him to stay in Portland and get the money he deserves, and so far the contract has not been problematic. But there is another player who was eligible in 2019, and that was Kemba Walker. The Charlotte Hornets did not offer Kemba the Supermax, as he wasn't absolutely a superstar, and the Hornets had only made the postseason twice with Kemba. So it's clear that he wasn't worth the Supermax for the position the Hornets were in. With the Hornets not offering Kemba any more money than any other team, Kemba would sign with the Celtics, and the Hornets decide to rebuild. Next, we go to the 2020 offseason, where Rudy Gobert and Giannis Antetokounmpo were the two players eligible for the Supermax. Gobert is an interesting example because he might not be worth the Supermax, but he is an essential piece for the Utah Jazz. Gobert and the Jazz would settle in between, as Gobert would sign a 5-year, $205 million deal. $23 million less than the full Supermax, but more than the normal max. Finally, we get to the last and most important Supermax deal. The Bucks re-signed two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. There were so many rumors of Giannis leaving the small market of Milwaukee in free agency. Giannis would end up re-signing in Milwaukee, and now he's one of the best players in the world, and he's staying in Milwaukee. This is probably the best example of the Supermax working, as a two-time MVP has re-signed in one of the smallest markets in the league. Now that we've seen every example of Supermax eligibility, let's talk about some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros are that the Supermax allows teams to offer their franchise player more money than any other team, enticing them to stay. The Supermax also rewards players to stay loyal to the team that drafts them, and it has also been proven to convince players to stay, as only one player has declined the Supermax. The Supermax is also a wake-up call to franchises about the player they're building around, like the Sacramento Kings with DeMarcus Cousins and the Charlotte Hornets with Kemba Walker. Also, if a player declines the Supermax, it gives the teams a chance to trade them, and they have time to trade them, like in the case of Anthony Davis. Though the Supermax is more money, though, it hasn't prevented players from leaving. If a player doesn't want to stay, then the increase in money might not matter. The Supermax can also handicap franchises, as 35% of the cap is a lot, and can prevent teams from building around their guy and signing a second star. Then the Supermax has also led to teams trading away their franchise player, like with DeMarcus Cousins, or not offering their franchise player the Supermax, like with Kemba Walker, in fear of a situation similar to the Wizards with John Wall. Next, if a player signs the Supermax and gets injured or declines, the contract becomes a negative asset, like in the case of John Wall and Russell Westbrook to an extent. Supermax eligibility can also lead teams to overpaying players like Rudy Gobert. My final gripe with the Supermax is that I believe that not many players are worth 35% of the cap. There are too many players eligible, because in my opinion, less than 10 players are worth 35% of the cap and the Supermax. Players like DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, Kemba Walker, and Rudy Gobert are not worth the Supermax, and their eligibility puts their teams in bad positions. It's clear to see that there are problems with the Supermax. I don't think removing the Supermax altogether is a good idea, as there are some positives with the Supermax, so I've come up with two solutions that could fix the Supermax. My first solution is very simple. The Supermax is the same amount of money going to the player, but only counts for 25% of the cap, like the normal max. This still rewards players for staying with their franchises and staying loyal, but does not handicap the franchise offering their player the Supermax. This is a pretty simple solution, and I can't see many downsides. My second solution is to do with Supermax eligibility. Instead of the current Supermax eligibility, with this change, the only players who are Supermax eligible are players who have finished in the top 5 of MVP voting in the season before signing the Supermax. This change would solve two problems. First, it would make sure that only elite players would be eligible for the Supermax and not put franchises in difficult positions. And secondly, it would also motivate superstars who care about the Supermax to try hard and put in the effort in the regular season, as things like load management and taking off back-to-backs are becoming more common. So to conclude, I think the Supermax has some pros and cons, and it can both help and hurt franchises. It's unclear whether the Supermax was a good idea, but I don't think it should be removed. I think just a few tweaks, either it only counts for 25% of the cap, or changing the eligibility could really help out the Supermax, because there are some positives, as I mentioned, as only one player has declined the Supermax. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. What do you guys think about the Supermax? Should it be removed? How would you change it? Let me know in the comments. And feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.